Okay, what's up guys? I'm here to do a book haul. Yay, I'm super happy. I just got back from a trip to New York and my trip was amazing. It was awesome. I saw a lot of my close friends that I haven't seen in a long time. Time was moving so fast when I was in New York that I didn't have time to hit up all the places I wanted to, even though I was there for a week. But I went to two bookstores. I went to the Strand and I went to Cafe Con Libros, which I believe is an Afro-Latina owned book shop. So I'm so excited to show you the books that I got from there and also books that were sent to me. Okay, so the first book I want to show you is completely default of a group I like to call Sally Rooney Hive, and these are like mega stands of Sally Rooney. Ever since I saw the promotional boxes some of you got with the bucket hats, and I saw the New York Times profile on Sally Rooney calling her, you know, this Marxist, this amazing writer, I was like, you know what, let me read Sally Rooney. I've known about Sally Rooney since Normal People, but I never picked up a book by her and finished it or even started it. So I'm super excited to get into this book. And it is her latest release, Beautiful World, Where Are You? Yeah, you guys have been, you know, really pushing this book. You've really been pushing this book and it works. So Sally Rooney Hive, you win. I get the sense that Sally Rooney is what John Green was to us when we were teenagers. So in this book, it follows Alice, Felix, Eileen, and Simon. And it says, Alice, Felix, Eileen, and Simon are still young, but life is catching up with them. They desire each other, they delude each other, they get together, they break apart, they have sex, they worry about their friendships and the world they live in. Are they standing in the last lighted room before the darkness, bearing witness to something? Will they find a way to believe in a beautiful world? So to me, this seems like a very character-driven book instead of plot-driven. Doesn't seem like it's moving in any specific epic or journey or direction, but instead just capturing human life. So it seems very, very contemporary fiction, and that is my favorite genre, so I'm super excited for this book. This book is one of the books I got from Cafe Con Libros, and it is Intimacies, a novel by Katie Kitamura, and I have her book A Separation, but I haven't read it yet. But this book I wanted to get because I'd seen it a lot on Bookstagram. It's also fairly short. It's less than 230 pages, which to me was a selling point because I've been reading a lot of books in the 300, 400, 500 page, you know, arena, and I'm just like, can we shorten these books up just a little bit? Just a little bit. They're getting very long these days. This book is about an interpreter who lives in New York and works at an international court where she is, you know, her job is to interpret a lot of foreign nationals and what they're talking about. So I guess in this book, she's drawn in a lot of personal dramas. The other book I got from Cafe Con Libros, I only got two books. This book is Edge Case by Yiz Chin. I hope I'm saying that right. I'm starting to really love these covers of these like contemporary fiction books. I don't know, I love contemporary fiction. But so this book is about a female employee at her New York City tech startup who is married to her husband, Marlon. And one day she comes home to find that her husband has left her, packed his suitcase, and bounced. And now she's like, did he give up on their quest to get green cards because they're from Malaysia? Did he go back to Malaysia? And the main character has an overbearing mom, and so she's trying to keep the fact that her husband fled away from her mom. She's also dealing with, you know, like whether she should stay in her marriage, whether she should stay in the United States. I have never read this author or even heard of this author, but that's what made me more attracted to getting this book because this is an author that I'm not, you know, familiar with, but yet this book seems just so good and it seems like something I would like. So then I went to the Strand and I got two books. The first book is a book I've already talked about. I shared in my anticipated releases for September, and it is Fault Lines by Emily Itami. This is a debut novel from her. Basically, it's about this Tokyo housewife who has the perfect husband, perfect kids, perfect apartment, but is unsatisfied with her life, and she gets involved with a restaurant owner and basically like decides, should I keep my stable but boring life, or should I destroy my current life for this more exciting man? I just love reading about women and dating and intimate relationships. That's just my like bread and butter in contemporary fiction. Like I love reading about stuff like that. The last book I got from the Strand in New York, Somebody's Daughter, a memoir by Ashley C. Ford. I've talked about it on this channel. I'm not a huge fan of memoirs, but it's kind of different. I feel like when the person whose memoir it is not a celebrity. Basically, Ashley C. Ford talks about having a father who was incarcerated when she was young and how that affected her relationships in the future, especially with men, and the secrets that her family kind of kept from her about her father's incarceration. Someone told me this is a good book to read if you are into prison and police abolition, because it talks about how incarceration can pretty much fuck up a young child's life. Okay, so those are the books I bought in New York. Let's get into the books that were sent to me. So a friend from Bookstagram sent me Weather by Jenny Offill, and I've heard so much about Jenny. It's not even funny. She's like Sally Rooney. She's like, you know, one of those like really popular white women authors who are like blowing up in the contemporary fiction space. But this friend from Bookstagram, she didn't like it. So she was like, who wants this? And I was like, well, I'll try it because I've never read this author, yet I've heard so much about her. And she writes in my favorite genre, which is contemporary fiction. And I've heard really good things about this. This is supposed to be very contemplative and just a gorgeous novel, so we shall see. A book that I bought, I went to an Oakland book fair, 7 Days in June by Tia Williams, a novel. Again, this is another book that on Bookstagram I had just heard so much about, and I had never read anything by Tia Williams, but she's a Black author, and so I was like, hey, let me give this a shot. Now this is actually a romance book, which romance is one of my least favorite genres. I don't think it's like a deal breaker for me, but it's just not a genre I am keeping up with. But this is like kind of different. So basically this book is about two Black writers who fall in love when they meet at a literary event. And it turns out 15 years ago, they had already kind of spent some time together, but this is like a second chance at love. I love the cover, and everyone has said that this book is really good. Okay, so now I'm gonna go really quick through the books that were sent to me. Okay, so this book you guys have already seen, but the hardcover was sent to me. This is In Every Mirror, She's Black. This is about 3 Black women who are connected by this one white man who works as a CEO or top executive at this company. But basically one of the women is a Somali refugee that cleans the offices. Another woman is a flight attendant who I think has a fling with the white man. And then a third one works at the same office that the white man does. So they're all connected through this man, and it kind of tells the story of each of their lives. Beasts of Prey by Ayana Gray is the first installment of an Afro fantasy series. Again, it's hard for me to describe fantasy novels without having read it, so I'm not gonna attempt to give you a summary, but just look it up. A lot of great reviews have been posted about this book. The Perfect Find by Tia Williams is, again, an author I just showed you, the same author of 7 Days in June. This is about a former fashion editor who is now 40 years old and who is trying to restart her kind of like fashion it status at an online fashion site. And while she's working at this online fashion site trying to become what she once was, she falls in love with a 20-year-old videographer. So there's like 20 years distance between them, so they're dealing with that. But also she's like trying not to mess up the fact that she has a new job and she's trying to get back to being that fashion it girl that she once was. Grievers by Adrienne Marie Brown. You guys have heard me talk about Adrienne Marie Brown. She wrote We Will Not Cancel Us. I read a lot of her nonfiction, but this is her first fiction novel. So this is set in Detroit, and the main character's mother is patient 0 of this unknown disease. So this is kind of sci-fi-ish and deals with grief. And also set in Detroit, it kind of deals with a forgotten city and the history of Detroit. This book is a book I actually am really excited to read. Lifelines, A Doctor's Journey in the Fight for Public Health by Leanna Wen. This book is so important. It talks about how important funding public health and preventative medicine is. Now that we've dealt with COVID-19, we should know better. We should be able to predict pandemics better. And public health is a very interesting sector of medicine because it's focused on trying to kind of stop things before they get too bad. So predicting what communities things are gonna hit, where diseases are gonna hit, what communities are most susceptible to a certain disease, you know, how can we stop disease from spreading? So I'm super excited to read this. We Keep the Dead Close by Becky Cooper. This is a book that I was on the fence about buying, but luckily the publisher was just sending these books, so I got a copy. I didn't have to buy it. Basically, Becky Cooper is an undergrad at Harvard, and she gets interested in this case that happened 40 years earlier where a graduate student at Harvard's anthropology department was killed. And there's kind of mystery surrounding that death. And so she basically revives an investigation into this graduate anthropology student's life. Master of Poisons is another Afro fantasy book. It's by Andrea Hairston. Again, look up the summary because I'm not the best at describing fantasy. And every time I look at videos where I describe fantasy books, I'm like, I don't know that that was correct. So, but yeah, I think it's the first installment as well. And this seems to have to do with farmland, and climate change. The Infinite Noise by Laura Shippen is a book I'm actually really hyped for. The main character's name is Caleb, and he has the ability to get a sense of people's emotions very strongly, like a real empath. And he gets pretty much obsessed with this one person's like emotion aura, and his name is Adam. He's a football player at his high school. Now, I don't know if the relationship they have is inherently queer, but they do form a very close relationship. So this is kind of like low fantasy because it's set on Earth. Everything's the same except for the fact that Caleb has heightened abilities to kind of read people's emotions. So I'm excited to read this book. Sometimes I Trip on How Happy We Could Be by Nicole Perkins. I already received a copy of this book, but they resent it to me in a package that included the craziest shit in a promo package I've ever seen. Everyone who got the promo package got a vibrator, not a cheap vibrator, an expensive vibrator, and also like CBD gift cards and just different stuff. I'll just say that. Black Girls Must Die Exhausted by Jane Allen. I already had this book. I had this book on my Kindle before it was mainstream published. So this book was originally self-published, and I bought the book because it's very interesting. But basically it follows a black woman in her 30s that has pretty much everything: perfect boyfriend, perfect apartment, perfect job, but she gets a diagnosis that might mean that she can't have kids in the future. And having a kid is something that's really important to her. And then lastly, I got a book from AK Press called Lessons in Liberation, an Abolitionist Toolkit for Educators. So if you're a teacher, you want to kind of like get the basics on abolition and teach it in your family, this might be a good buy. Okay, so I just got a alert that I got a package, so I'm just gonna open up the package in front of you guys because I'm pretty sure it's book related. So this is an add-on, guys, but yeah. They sent me Spritz Wine. This is the poem, My Darling from the Lions by Rachel Long. Morgan Parker, some heavy hitter names have reviewed this. This is a drinking out of cup that they sent me. I don't believe there's anything else. Okay. Cool package. Okay, that's it. Bye.